My wife and I were crazy enough to start a town about 22 years ago, and learned a lot of lessons. And we're just going to give you a little background on a little bit about who we are and what we're about and why we think this opportunity in Sequim is really a great opportunity for us, and we hope a really great opportunity for the community. It's very early though. That's one of the things we want to emphasize, that there's a lot of work to do here. We haven't even turned in an application to the city of Sequim, and we've been working with all the public agencies closely with our consultants. But we are very serious about this. We're very excited about this, and we are making progress quickly. But we really want to hear from as many people as possible to make sure that our plan and design will fit in with the community. So I'm never good at this sharing screen thing. Sometimes, so I'm disabled right now. So you've got to enable me to share my screen. There we go. And now I want to go full screen. Does that look good on your end?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so for those of you who are not familiar with the site, this is the property that's been owned by the John Wayne family for decades. You might know the history that the John Wayne Marina property was actually donated by John Wayne. I don't know how many decades ago, but and they've been hanging on to this property for quite a while. They reached out to us about 10 years ago, and they're when they saw Seabrook and visited Seabrook, they felt like it was the right kind of design that would fit their property, and that something their dad would be proud of, and kind of a legacy on this property. So we've been again talking for a long time. They've had it listed on the market for a long time. The timing wasn't right initially. The timing is right now. And so we're excited to learn more about the property, learn more about the community, and hear from everyone we can. So if you're not familiar with Seabrook, we definitely encourage you to come down and make a visit. It's a beautiful little town that has been built over the last 20 plus years. My wife and I stepped foot on the property about 23 years ago, before we started the process. For those of you who don't know anything about us, pretty humble beginnings. Went off to community college out of high school. We both finished at the University of Puget Sound. My wife actually went there all 4 years, but tuition was very expensive, so I started a house painting business with a $1,000 Home Depot credit card. So no silver spoon here. We've really over the last 30 plus years built a business and a reputation on serving our customers and having a lot of integrity. In fact, we actually have lived in two of our communities full time. We've been living in Seabrook for the last 20 years. So we're all about accountability with both our homeowners, our guests, any visitors, and of course the local community surrounding Seabrook. So after college, we moved immediately down to the Oregon coast, down to the Lincoln City area, and designed our first house. We had no home building background or development background, but that was actually a good thing because we were able to look at development with a new lens, kind of a fresh lens. I grew up on a cul-de-sac in a suburban neighborhood in Vancouver, Washington. Anything I wanted to do as a kid, it was I had to ask my mom or dad to drive me wherever I wanted to go, and so not a lot of independence. Meanwhile, my wife grew up in a neighborhood, walkable and bikeable neighborhood in Portland called Selwood. It's southeast Portland, and she could walk and bike to everything she needed to go to. So she was very independent. And once I saw how she grew up, I was pretty convinced that's how I wanted our kids to grow up. So that really led us down this path of learning about walkable communities and mixed use development. So in 1999, we learned when we started thinking about building our own neighborhood and what would that look like and how would we go about it, we learned about this place called Seaside, Florida. The story of Seaside was it was built on the panhandle between Destin and Panama City. Um, and the developers, Robert and Daryl Davis, his wife's Daryl, they decided that they would go back to the idea of building a town. They thought back to the places that they loved the most, and they were all old places, places like Nantucket and Savannah, Georgia, and Charleston and St. Augustine. So West Coast examples would be Carmel and Bozeman, Montana, and Park City, places like that. And they realized that once the automobile was introduced in the 20s and 30s, that we as developers completely threw everything that we knew about land development and the garbage can and urban planning and town design. And we started to design around the automobile instead of the pedestrian. So before the automobile, everything was designed at a pedestrian scale. And again, it was very walkable, and you could live very independently without having to go too far. So Seaside became a massive success. It was Design of the Decade in Time magazine. People travel from all over the world to see Seaside, even though most people on the West Coast haven't even heard of it. But this really changed the game. Anybody in an urban planning class anywhere in the world is probably Seaside's gonna come up. And basically they restarted this movement, or what some like to describe the art of town building. They brought back the art of town building and this sophistication that went into the design of great places. And these are the most beautiful towns, villages, and cities around the world. That's all we're doing, is learning from the best places from around the world. Nothing new here. On the right-hand side, this is Rosemary Beach, a town that started about 10 miles down the road after Seaside became a success. And this was just recently listed in Architectural Digest as one of the 25 most beautiful main streets in America. Yet it started in 1996. If you were to walk down this main street, you would think you were in a town that could be 200-300 years old, because the quality is so high. And it's the same thing with Seaside. These places are incredibly vibrant because of the way they've been designed, the way they've been built, and the intentionality is really, really incredible. So thankfully, we got to be mentored by the founders of Seaside, Florida. They basically gave us the playbook on how to build a town from scratch, and they're really like we call them our Florida family. They are very close to us, and we couldn't have done what we've done without their expertise and shepherding us along the way. We also hired the assistant director of town development at Rosemary Beach to be our director of town development in Seabrook. So, but we didn't just come up, and once we learned about Seaside and Rosemary Beach, we didn't just come back and build a town. We came back and we wanted to make sure this is actually something that would work along the West Coast, and these principles would apply here in the Northwest, and people would be willing to be a part of it. So this was 10 acres of land down on the Central Oregon coast, just north of Depot Bay, south of Lincoln City. The property had been similar to the John Wayne property, had been on the market for over 10 years. Nobody wanted to buy it, no offers. It was $1.1 million. It had an RV park to the south and a mobile home park to the north. Most people thought it would be one or the other. Nobody thought there'd be a nice little neighborhood kind of squeezed in between here. But our land planner, Lawrence Kamar, who designed Seabrook and designed our land plan for Sequim, designed this little neighborhood. We went to the local banks and said, hey, would you loan us $1.4 million to build this new neighborhood? And they said, no, we were crazy. And that's because the average days on the market were 270 days. Now, this is 1999. And again, nothing was selling. There was a glut of inventory available that nobody was buying. And there were a lot of bankrupt developers along the coastline. So they thought they were doing us a favor. We found a bank in Southern Oregon that listened to us and believed in the plan. And they loaned us the money. And in the first 90 days, we sold out half the community and we paid off our development loan in 4 months of $1.4 million. So my wife and I were 27 and 28 years old at the time. And I looked at my wife and said, Laura, we're going to have to build a town, because people are really thirsty for this. The reason nothing was selling in that market at that time was that there was nothing being designed that was compelling enough for people to purchase. So we thought we were, kind of struck a chord. This is just another little image of Bella Beach coming up from the beach access. You can see the little cottages. We really focus a lot on the landscaping and the public spaces. So this was the public beach access down to the beach. So this is Seabrook, looking over Seabrook today. Still not complete. We have our town center. We're doubling the size of our town center here in this next few years, and some of that's already under construction. This is just, if you haven't been in Seabrook, this kind of gives you a little bit of the vibe. Again, very bikeable, very walkable, pedestrian friendly. People come there and they don't understand why everybody's smiling, and they might think they're actors, but it's because these spaces make people feel good, and it naturally makes you want to interact with other people because of the way the sidewalks and the streets have been designed so that cars drive slowly and people can navigate very easily around by foot and by bicycle. But we are inspired by the best places in the Northwest. So a lot of the architecture and design isn't that new. Obviously, a great image here of Port Townsend and why Port Townsend is such a special place for so many, with the shops and restaurants and the main street down on the water, and then the town up top, or I should say the neighborhood up top. Now, one of the things about development or urban planning as we went from Europe to East Coast to West Coast is that we became less and less dense as we developed along the West Coast. So some people come to Seabrook and say, "Oh, this feels like Nantucket, and this feels like places along the East Coast." Well, it's not the architecture. The architecture is actually from the Northwest. It's all inspired by Northwest places in Seabrook. But what is different is we are denser. We are more like an East Coast town because the walkability is so important to us. So having, 10,000 square foot lots, 8,000 square foot lots really doesn't work at the scale that we're trying to build. So typically our bigger lots are 4,000 square feet, maybe 5,000 square feet, but we have a lot of lots that are much smaller. So Port Townsend, for example, isn't as walkable as a place like, say, Nantucket that has higher density, more people living close to the neighborhood center. Another great place that we love, Langley, great little main street, shops, restaurants. Again, not very dense, but the town center is a really sweet little main street and place to walk, bicycle, grab an ice cream cone, have dinner with friends. This is what placemaking is all about. Another one in LaConner, another great example of a Northwest town that was built, or I should say designed before the automobile. And then Roach Harbor, another neat little place. And then, of course, downtown Sequim, just even looking at the old grid of downtown Sequim, having alleys, narrower streets, a nice little main street for people to shop and eat. And this is what is so part of what's so appealing about Sequim is this main street in this town center. The water is great and the views are great, but the soul of every community is that town center and the shops and the restaurants. Those are the places we want to hang out. Those are the places that we want to be. So what do all these places have in common? Well, first of all, they're designed on a grid. So there's connectivity between the pathways, the alleys, the streets, the sidewalks, and they all overlap. In suburban development, I like to describe, just using my hand, there's kind of one way in, one way out, and it leads to a cul-de-sac. This is where I grew up, is something like this. And then each one of my fingers is a cul-de-sac. And you don't really know your neighbors in this cul-de-sac. You might know everybody here, but you don't know everybody here. But when you actually build a fabric of connectivity like this, like what you see on the screen here, that's when people connect with one another. That's when you get to know your neighbors. we're much better citizens, and we take care of our communities when we have more visibility and can connect and talk with one another in a very comfortable position. So again, the idea is to meet the basic needs of the residents and or guests in a 5 to 10 minute walk. Um, if you haven't been to Seabrook, all of our events are public, and of course, everything is open to the community. So we hope to we hope to be a part of the community, and we're going to welcome everybody in. And just like we hope that we're welcomed in, and we're excited to work with the Chamber of Commerce in downtown Sequim and really like have complimentary events and support each other. There's a lot more retail in downtown Sequim that we won't need to build nearly as much as what we've built here in Seabrook. But it's again these special kind of events that really draw people from outside of the community. Not these aren't Some of these people are residents, of course, but a lot of people are just from around the county. Um, we're also focusing a lot of our design on multi-generational housing. So it seems like we all have a parent or a child or coming out of college or whatever that needs a place to live. So we are starting to design more houses with ADUs, and in some cases even secondary ADUs. It used to, again, before the automobile, our families lived very close together. Grandma lived down the street. So, for example, in Seabrook, my mother-in-law, who's 84, my daughter can hop on her bike and ride to her house and do her nails and spend an afternoon with her. And that's pretty unusual. And some people might think that's utopic, but that's the way we used to live. And this is exactly what we're doing with Seabrook and what we plan to do with our new community in Sequim. A lot of different housing types. So again, what makes these great places is it wasn't just 4 or 5 floor plans. It was a lot of variety in housing types. So from small cottages to townhouses to what are described as live work units, shop on the bottom, residence on top. And then these could be apartments or condominiums, but a lot of different ways that you can live. And that also is what shapes the pedestrian experience. So you're not seeing a monotonous street of similar sized homes or similar designed homes. You're actually seeing a variety of different housing types that makes it a lot more interesting. This also supports workforce housing within our community. So a lot of our employees can live in an apartment above a garage or a small cottage and afford it and still be able to walk to work or ride their bike to work. This is bringing that connection back, that front porch connection where you can walk down the sidewalk, meet your neighbors, talk to your neighbors. This happens very comfortably, very naturally. I describe our sidewalks as our social media, like our Facebook before Facebook. This is how we got to know people. This is how we found out what was going on in town. This is how we met up for a glass of wine or for coffee. It just happens again very naturally. Um, this is an e-bike, as most of you have seen, but e-bikes are changing the world. And you're seeing a lot more people on e-bikes, and even people that haven't ridden a bike for decades are getting on these things and they feel like kids again. So if you haven't tried it, try it because they're a lot of fun. And the fact that the Olympic Peninsula Trail, the Discovery Trail, is part of this community is really amazing because it's going to allow people to maneuver between, from Port Townsend to the John Wayne Marina to downtown Sequim to Port Angeles on that paved lane. And electric bikes really are going to activate that more and more as we see the years go by, as people discover these things. We work really hard to have great reviews from homeowners, guests. So one of the big questions people ask is how many homes are going to be full-time? How many homes are going to be in the rental program? So in Seabrook, 15% of our homes are occupied by full-time residents. There's a higher number of part-time residents that will live, months at a time, and then they live somewhere else. I'm assuming that's very similar in Sequim. And then 55% of the homes are actually in the rental program. So there's about 600 homes complete, and about 300 of those are in the rental program. When some people say, are you designing this to be just like Seabrook? Well, we're using the same design principles, but how the homes get used has more to do with the local demographics. Our expectation right now is that closer to 70% of the homes in this new community are going to be full-time residents or part-time residents and will not be in the rental program. So the rental program might be much smaller. We expect it to be much smaller than what you find in Seabrook, and that's something we're really excited about. We've never been all about vacation rentals, and we've never been all about full-time living, but it's really has more to do with the market that you're in. Because there are more services in the Sequim area, we expect to see more people again living there full-time. But when they do decide to rent their house out, we have in really a very unique business model where we only manage vacation rentals in our community. So we basically take the best of the hotel industry and we combine that with the short-term rental industry. The reason there are so many problems with short-term rentals and vacation rentals is because the neighborhoods weren't designed to accommodate them, and that's why you have garbage issues, parties, noise, parking, all those kinds of problems, which is why most people are trying to prohibit vacation rentals around the country. We were actually concerned about those problems, which is why we basically built in from the ground up the infrastructure to support short-term rentals. So we have on-site staff, an on-site lobby. We check everybody in, we check their driver's license, and we have 24-hour security to make sure that everybody's playing by the rules. And we also encourage any homeowners to report anything back to us. So if you were to call Grays Harbor County, which is the county we're in, and ask how many problems or how many phone calls they've gotten about complaints about vacation rentals, they would tell you zero. I haven't tried it yet, and you could try it, but I expect that number is going to be zero, and that's because of the way we manage the properties. We just don't have the problems that are associated with short-term rentals in our communities because we have so many people on site to make sure that our guests and our homeowners are in harmony with one another. These are our core values for our company. It really started in the early days, but we do the right thing. We play as a team. We make things happen. Our neighbors matter, and that's not just the neighbors in our community, it's the neighbors outside of our community. So in Seabrook's case, it's the Quinault Nation, it's Pacific Beach, it's Mo Cliffs, it's Ocean Shores. Those are all very important neighbors, and then we love this town. You're not going to find a lot of people working at Seabrook that don't like what's going on. They feel a part of it. They feel like they're making history with us. And some people say, well, how are you going to get people to work there when we first started Seabrook? And that's probably the number one reason people come to work for us is because of our core values and because we're building something that they can bring their families to, their friends to, and walk down the street, again, get an ice cream cone, show off the community, and because they're very proud of it. So again, just looking at the Sequim site here, a lot of people have been asking about the waterfront, which of course they're tidelands. This really we see as just kind of a swimming area, amenitize this more as a place that in the summertime when the water heats up a little bit in the shallower waters here, that kids will swim, and we'll probably put some boundaries out here and maybe like a little dock that kids could swim to. Questions about the RV park. Is the RV park going to stay? No, that's really where our neighborhood center will go, where our shops and our restaurants will go to support the local community. And of course, everyone else in the area will hopefully enjoy this as well, just like we're going to enjoy going to Main Street and Sequim and spending our dollars as well. This is the plan. This is very similar to what was designed about 10 years ago when Lawrence designed this. The John Wayne family was so interested in getting our attention. They hired our land planner to do a land plan that would be similar to what we would do. And so if you look at the historical plan, it's very similar to this. one thing to differentiate here is the red is actually retail, and hopefully you can see that color on the screen. And then the orange is more higher density housing, so like townhouses, lofts above retail. I'm sorry, not retail, but lofts, stacked units, condominiums. And then this is all residential. This is the area that we plan on starting first, after, of course, we receive all approvals from all the public agencies in the city, and then we'll probably develop this last. Most of you probably also know that this site has been heavily impacted. It's not a natural site that's never been touched before. You can see here that this north phase had been cleared, decades ago, and you can even see the roads. There was a plat that was actually recorded in here, from what I understand. So this was always planned for development, and that is the area that we plan to develop. And then, of course, the RV park is built out. And then to the south here, when they dredged the marina, a lot of those spoils from the dredging came up onto this bluff, and they terraced the hillside. And you can see some of the remnants of that. Of course, we have all the geotech work. We feel very comfortable after seeing all the geotechnical work that's been done so far to make this buildable. We're used to building with deep foundations, pilings if necessary, and all sorts of things, developing on the Oregon coast and the Washington coast. So we feel very comfortable with this whole hillside. But I just want to point out that most of this has been touched. There's not a lot of land that hasn't been touched in here over the years. The area that we're really excited about is this Johnson Creek area. This is going to be a place that people are going to want to hike. We're going to be expanding the trails in there and making it just a really great destination for walkers. But just walking through our neighborhood, we have a lot of people drive to Seabrook just to walk around and get their steps in because it is so pedestrian friendly. Some questions that came up in the meeting, concerns about water. We weren't aware of this study at the time, or we would have brought it up quickly, but there's quite a report that has been done for, showing that there's adequate water, actually an excess of water. So it doesn't look like there's any concerns about the water. For the other questions were centered around the traffic, concerns about traffic around the marina, and also getting out on Highway 101. I did an interview the other day. I wasn't privy to the information about the roundabouts and the work to avoid roundabouts in this area. So I want to be very clear. All we want is a safe solution for people entering onto Highway 101. It doesn't need to be a roundabout, and we're going to let the city of Sequim and the Washington Department of Transportation come up with solutions there. And we won't be lobbying for a roundabout because there are other solutions to the problem up there, and I'm sure they'll figure that out. A traffic study will be required as part of the permitting process. If issues are identified in the study, we will work with WashDOT and the city. The type of development we're proposing creates 60 to 70% less daily trips than typical suburban development, as many of the daily trips will be converted to walking and bicycling. Again, that's why that paved trail, the Discovery Trail, is really important. Seabrook will require construction traffic to be routed along Whitefeather Way to Highway 101. Seabrook will encourage homeowners and guests to also use Whitefeather and 101. And then we also want to work with the neighbors on West Sequim Bay Road on some traffic calming designs to really help slow down traffic and avoid any problems there as well. But we really are, our owners and any guests that we have are going to be highly encouraged to use Whitefeather. That's why we want to make sure that it's safe getting out there. You can see here, this is just showing speeds and why we discourage high speeds. So to 10 to 15 miles an hour, it takes a car 25 feet to stop. The crash risk is 5%, and the fatality risk is 2%. You can see how this increases. This is 20 to 25 miles an hour. It more than doubles, 30 to 35 miles an hour. much higher, 45% fatality risk. So you can see why we are focused on building very pedestrian-friendly streets, where some people in our business like to say, people rule, cars drool, because the cars really have to be secondary to the pedestrians, and they will yield for pedestrians. One of the questions, are there any plans for the John Wayne property and the screens? Yes. Are there any plans for the John Wayne Marina property and the current parking and traffic issues during peak times? The Port of Port Angeles owns and operates the marina, and we will continue to work with them. Our plan is to continue to accommodate overflow parking on West Sequim Bay Road. How will the project affect boat slip demand and future pricing? Our answer is we aren't sure. We are going to be encouraging our owners to not necessarily own boats. I'm a boat owner. I know how much of a pain they can be. And we expect to see a lot of people doing shared boat. We'll be starting some shared boat programs, places or ways that you can rent boats for time periods rather than owning boats, which can be well received. And then the Port of Port Angeles owns and operates the marina and will continue to do so. That being said, we are supportive of marina upgrades and expansions. So if there is more demand, which we expect there will be more demand, that there can be some expansions, and that's something we're going to be supportive of. So how to follow the project and contact Seabrook, please use our Sequim info@seabrookwa.com to ask questions and provide feedback. We welcome that and encourage you to do that. We'll also be creating a website to provide additional details. So thanks for listening to our, a little bit about our plans and what we're up to.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Casey.
Welcome.
So at this point, if anyone has any questions for Casey, we'll go ahead and take questions. And if not, let's see, Jim Stouffer, go ahead.
Yes, hi, good morning. Thank you, Casey. Just
Morning.
a couple items. I live on West Sequim Bay Road at the Sun Meadows area, which is not inside the city limits.
Huh? What are you watching?
So 2 questions. I hike a lot along the Leopard Discovery Trail, and a lot of elk migrate across the road there and head down Johnson Creek. So what would be your plan for that? And then the mitigating traffic along West Sequim Bay Road is important. There's several school bus stops along that route. So the kiddos are going to be dropped off in the evening and picked up in the morning. And so just make sure your plans include conversations around those safety of those issues. Thank you again.
Thank you. Well, so in regards to the elk, we have heard about the elk, and I would hope that they're going to continue to come through Johnson Creek, kind of natural area there. I don't know if they're coming down to the water, down to the sound, or what they're doing, but we would encourage that. As far as West Sequim Bay Road, we're hoping to work with again the Port of Port Angeles to calm as much of that section as possible. We're going to be requesting a stop sign at the entrance, or I should say at the intersection, at that first southern parking lot and where our little neighborhood center Main Street is. And that will slow traffic down, but also adding crosswalks and other pedestrian amenities along that road, whether it be a sidewalk, a bike lane, things like that. So we believe that little section of West Sequim Bay Road is going to really slow down. And some people might not like hearing that because they want to get from point A to point B, but with as many people that will be living in the area, It only makes sense to make it really pedestrian friendly. And it's going to take a little more time to drive West Sequim Bay Road because of these traffic calming elements, but it's going to keep people safe. It's also going to make the port property much more welcoming and inviting for the public, which is an amazing public amenity. So our hope is that this amenity gets used a lot more. And I believe that's what the port would like to see as well. A lot of times this can be an underutilized area. There are peak times, and we've heard all about the peak times and the amount of traffic and how crazy it gets down there. But we're hoping more in the off-peak times that the marina is used by the public and enjoyed by the public.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. So Stephen has several questions. Stephen, do you want me to read them or would you like to ask them? Okay, not hearing from Stephen, I'll go ahead and read them. So he says, great presentation. I'm excited for the Sequim project. Can you talk about first, based on lodging tax data, Clallam County is not viewed as a Four Seasons tourist destination. A lot of the retired community are snowbirds too. So what do you think this means for winter occupancy? Is Seabrook more quiet and empty in the winter?
Yeah, so we have a very seasonal business. Our occupancy runs about 45% on an annual basis. I would expect that's pretty similar to what you have up in Sequim. I personally would think that it would be a little higher there just because of the dry weather and a little more sunshine in the off season. But yeah, it's very seasonal, and we expect this will be the same. And that's why we're excited about having more full-time residents, because we think the community will be more vibrant in the off season than Seabrook is. If I look out the door right now, there's probably not a lot of people walking down the street. Now today's Wednesday, so tomorrow they'll start coming in and they'll start filling up the town for the weekend, and we'll be very busy. But our owners really enjoy the fluctuation of people kind of coming in and coming out and making the community feel more vibrant.
His next question is, we also have an issue with workforce housing. How much of the total housing capacity will be available to rent at, say, $1,500 a month?
We can't answer that question right now, but what we can tell you is we've been building, baking in housing into our communities now for over 25 years. Pretty unusual. I would assume that that's not something other developers do in the area that are building these large neighborhoods. They're actually built kind of baking in workforce housing, but we do that. But I don't have any numbers what the rents are going to be. We haven't talked to contractors to see what our construction costs are going to be up there. A lot more to learn before we'll know that. But just know that our design philosophy accommodates that, and because we are a developer and a builder, if we can't find people that that can, I should say, if we can't find employees because of housing, we will build housing. That's what we've always done over the years, is make sure that we can that we find housing for the employees.
Great. Next is, can you talk about the economic impact and the number of jobs created initially for construction, but longer term as well?
Well, right now, again, because Seabrook has a higher percentage of vacation rentals, we have nearly 200 employees on our payroll. And that's housekeeping, maintenance. We have a 20,000 square foot laundry facility. That's security, construction. We have our own construction company. So we're general contractors, but we hire local subcontractors. So that's what we're also planning to do in Sequim, and we may also partner with some builders in the area. So, like, for example, one of our builders here, I mean, he builds everything out. So he's his own general contractor. We would prefer that, actually.
Casey, we have probably 150 to 200 local contractors on the site in a given day, pretty regularly. It's almost like they're employees because they come to this site every day out at Seabrook, and we anticipate that'd be similar in Sequim.
Great. So this next question is, what are the next milestones? How long is permitting? What is the timeline over the next 3 years?
We're working hard right now to get the application complete. And I think we're probably, I don't want to set hard dates, but I think we're 2 or 3 months away from having an application turned in. And then it takes the city, then the city's going to process that and on their timeline, and all the public agencies are going to process the application, and there'll be lots of meetings and discussions before the city can make a recommendation to the council on whether this is a good thing for the city of Sequim or not a good thing for the city of Sequim. So my guess is if everything went smooth, maybe by the end of the year, that we have some public hearings. But that's just kind of speculation right now. We don't know exactly a hard timeline. If that were the case, go ahead, Jeff. You have a little better idea of time.
No, I was just gonna say, like, once it's, if it gets approved, it's probably a year for underground utilities before like anything starts going vertical anyway. So I mean, we're a ways out from seeing anything really constructed on the site for sure. But yeah, I agree, Casey. I think we're talking this summer, some late summer for submittal, and then it's just kind of on the city's timeline for, how that works from that point.
And so I know when I've talked to you, you've emphasized that this plan is not at all set in stone, other than, the design concepts that are important to you. But you've been modifying it and changing your design, your path, based on input from different people and stakeholders. Can you talk about what stakeholders you've met with thus far?
Yeah, so the first thing is we hosted a meeting a couple of weeks ago, a week and a half ago at the port or at the marina, and we had about 200 between two groups. There was an evening group and a morning group, close to 250 people in total, and those were really nice meetings to have and to hear concerns, questions, and a lot of fear as well. People just concerned about change, and people understood that this property is eventually going to get developed. And so the message that we really want to send is that it's going to get developed by somebody. We would like it to be us, and we hope that our track record and our reputation tells people that we take it very seriously. We work really closely with our community. We want to be good neighbors. And there is transparency. We've always been very transparent. That's part of the reason we've built these relationships with our local community. So we're gonna run by the same playbook here. And if it's not us, there might be somebody else that doesn't work by those same values, and that could be a little different outcome. So as far as the plan goes, I mean, we didn't hear anything in those meetings where people were saying, well, what if you put the neighborhood center over here or the neighborhood center over here? So we didn't really get any specific feedback in that regard. It makes a lot of sense for that to go where the RV park is, because that's the most impacted development. It's the most intensely developed part of the property. It also has great views of the water and has easy access to the marina. So instead of people having to drive down to the marina, they can just, walk right, have the higher density right adjacent to the marina is better for parking, because they won't need parking spots down at the marina. So I think our plan, I mean, again, it's feeling pretty good. So I wouldn't expect to see a lot of changes unless some people have, some ideas that we haven't thought of. And we're still open-minded to that. And then there's the density issue that some people are like, oh, well, gosh, that's, so many houses. There were some gasps when we mentioned that there could be, around 600 houses on this property. But anybody that follows, smart growth trends and the realities of we have a limited amount of land to develop. And so we want to have the most density and the least impact on the environment. And so putting higher densities in allows other property to be less impacted in the area and the surrounding area. And we prioritize our open space as well. So like, for example, Seabrook's gonna, we have about 60% in open space. And we'll again prioritize open space here, but
Casey, it's also important to note that all that open space and recreational space is open to the public as well.
Yeah.
It's not gated, like you mentioned. In terms of the groups, Colleen, that we've met with, so like over the past couple of months, obviously continuing to talk with the city, Port Angeles, the Jamestown tribe. We've met with the anglers, local neighbors. We still need to meet with the commercial fishermen group. And then like the yacht club, in addition to the public meetings.
Okay, great. Darlene Shanfeld asks, are you planning for sea level rise, specifically distance from the seashore?
That will be something that will come up in the critical area studies, and just working with our geologists and biologists. So most of the development is uphill a good ways. There are always going to be risks associated with that. But we've been building along the ocean for a long time, and actually more significant risk along the ocean as far as geotechnical issues and rising sea levels. So I would say the majority of I don't know the exact elevation, so I can't give you detail on that, but most of the residential neighborhoods are going to be upland and out of any area that would be of concern.
There's a follow-up question. What kind of tsunami preparedness has been considered?
Well, we have a very elaborate tsunami emergency plan here at Seabrook. In fact, one of our homeowners is on the board of national geologists in the country. So we have almost like a full-time guy that's helping us with our emergency plan here. So it's not going to be hard for us to take all the work that we've done here and utilize that in Sequim. So we also have emergency containers full of food and kind of survival type stuff for after an earthquake or a potential tsunami. So we take that stuff really seriously. We have a whole handbook on emergency preparedness, not just for earthquakes and tsunamis, but fires and all sorts of things. So that's something that we're adept at being prepared for.
Great. Yeah, and the threat, if there is one, would be a lot bigger at Seabrook than it would be at Sequim Bay, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So aging seniors and home care, what are your thoughts regarding your development?
What we're working on here is more of a concierge program. Again, I mentioned I have an 84-year-old mother-in-law, and I also have a mother who's gets some in-home care. So we've learned a lot about it the last couple of years, and we really want this to be a place where people can age in place. And for one, keeping them as young as possible, as long as possible. And there's a lot of studies out there that show, living in walkable communities is one of the ways that you can stay independent longer. And in fact, even some people might look at the topography and go, "Oh gosh, walking up those hills, that would be tough." But the reality is, if we stop walking up hills, you won't be walking up hills any longer. And a lot of the places that there are more people that live over 100 years old is because they're walking hills and they're walking stairs on a daily basis. So we actually see that as a benefit to be built on a hillside than a negative. So that said, having kind of a concierge experience where people can bring in-home care, caregivers, physical therapists, occupational therapists, and limit the amount of times that you need to leave the neighborhood, and get service in the community. And I could see us having a small wellness facility in the community where people can walk to for all your basic kind of general practice stuff. Saw there was a doctor on this group, so those are the kind of people we'll be talking to about, maybe creating a little satellite office to support our community would be important. And then having car service to get to a doctor's appointment. We're also building a medical center here that will leverage telemedicine. So I always use the example, I've got I've got ear issues. And so you can now put a scope in my ear. I could be here just a mile down the road with a nurse practitioner, but my specialist at University of Washington could see in my ear with this device and tell me if I need to come in or not, or if I need labs or all that kind of thing. So we want to really leverage telemedicine to minimize trips into the city to see specialists, if at all possible.
Great. Nicole Hartman, who's the newest member of the Sequim City Council, asks, since Sequim Bay is a critical area for PNNL, have you met with them about potential impact from the increase in usage of the bay recreationally?
What was that, PNNL? All right. Didn't hear that.
Yeah, PNNL, Pacific Northwest National Labs. I think you guys did meet with them.
Oh,
We
yes.
met with Chris Menning, the executive director. We have had an initial conversation with them.
So the question again was traffic related?
No, have you met with them about potential impact from the increase in usage of the bay recreationally?
Oh, yes, they're familiar with what's going on. What we heard from them is that housing is one of their biggest challenges for recruiting. And so they actually are, again, this is early, but they seem to be encouraged by the design concepts that we're using, and that it will attract more experienced employees to come and work at the center.
We didn't specifically talk about recreational use in the bay, but I'm sure we will in the future with them.
Okay, great. Then the next question from Angela Jones. Long-term rentals are in great need on the peninsula. I noticed most of your housing in Seabrook is either residential housing to purchase or Airbnb. Will this be the same plan in Sequim?
We would love to have long-term rentals here. If there's a market for it, that's something that we would be excited to be a part of.
Great. Next is Regan Nichols. She's the superintendent of the Sequim School District. She says the Sequim School District has started a long-range facilities planning group. We are studying expected demographics for our future. As things progress, our school district would appreciate information on the aspects of long-term single-family housing versus yearly rentals and ADU units. Thank you.
Great.
Go ahead.
Oh, we work really closely with our school district here. We're very involved. So yeah, we'd love to have an open line of communication with them.
Great. Carlos Sebastian asks, do you plan to utilize local trades for construction throughout the project?
Yes.
That's easy. Okay. And Amy says, are there other high density neighborhoods planned between, she's calling it Sequimbrook, and City of Sequim reliant on White Feather and West Sequim Bay Road, larger area impact?
I don't believe there is, but I don't know. I'm not as familiar with that question as maybe Matt might be, or someone else. I don't see a lot more development potential along that road from what I've seen.
Okay.
There is more land at the top of the hill there that seems more like country, but I don't know. I don't think they would be using White Feather.
Yeah. Colleen Robinson from Habitat for Humanity asks, what about childcare for the workforce? Do you have any plans to support that?
We don't have any plans right now. It's too early, but I can tell you that we recruited the Bezos Foundation to build a year-round preschool just a mile outside of Seabrook. And they have, again, it's year-round, and it includes 3 meals a day. It's an amazing program. And that's something that we would love to see come to Sequim as well.
So I know we're running out of time here, but lastly, can you talk a little bit about your foundation?
Yeah, so the Seabrook Community Foundation, we started that in the very beginning. So 1% of our gross sales, home sales, goes into the foundation that supports our local schools. Primarily, we're focused on youth facilities, computers, things like that, sports programs, food banks. We even do some stuff with local animal shelters. So it's our way of giving back to the communities, making the communities outside of Seabrook stronger than when we came to the area. And we've put over $6 million into the foundation since its inception. And our big focus here right now is a new community center. Some of the most underprivileged youth in the state are just right outside here at Seabrook. And we're really excited to be a part of that, of their lives and making their lives better.
So with that, thank you, Casey. I see we ran out of time. And if there are any questions that we didn't hit, please send them to the email that they highlighted, which is, I think it's squiminfo@seabrookwa.com, if I'm remembering correctly. And we will have this discussion up on our website later on today if you go to clallam.org. And again, thank you so much, Casey and Jeff, for joining us, and also Paul and Matt. We appreciate you joining as well, and we look forward to further discussions. And in my personal opinion, it's a great concept, and we are excited to see what we'll be developing there. So thanks for your time. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you, everyone.
All right,
Talk to you.
thanks so much.
Have a great day.
You too.